Hey everyone, thanks for joining me again on my YouTube channel. This is Workshop Quick Takes. In a couple previous episodes involving projectXJ, which is our 2000 Jeep Cherokee XJ, we redid the interior. One of those involved the headliner, another one involved the sun visors and some reinforcements to the rear sound bar. And then the third one was a pretty epic one involving the interior refurbishment. In that video, however, we were showing some work done on the door trim cards, but didn't have an opportunity to explain what, in part because the rears were not yet done. Now they are, and we've finally gotten all that footage edited and put together so that you can see everything that you could possibly do to fix, repair, or upgrade door trim cards in your XJ. So let's get outside to the XJ, come along with me, and we'll take a look. We can take the door apart next. That involves screw, and plastic retaining clips. So I'm going to pop all this off, even though it's already partly loose, using a plastic tool. That'll help save pieces from breaking in here. After that, there are two plastic clips that connect the door latch rods to the latch assembly. Rotate them loose and slide out the rod. Then, unplug two electrical harness plugs, and away it goes. If you didn't catch all that the first time, here it is again on the passenger door. Same procedure, same hardware, just mirror image. The door panel is assembled with hot melt riveting. Only the latch plate has secondary mounting holes for a dealer-installed replacement kit, and we didn't have that, so all of our reassembly will be custom. More on that later. To remove the rivets, a Dremel-type rotary tool would be useful. We didn't have one here at the Site A workshop, so we used a drill and a stepper bit. In any case, make sure your tooling is sharp, or it will tear off the plastic posts instead of just grinding out the rivet surface. It's useful to have the post stubs back there for reassembly, so save as many as you can. Pay attention to which rivets are removed at this step. For our purposes, we only wanted to remove the trim panel and the latch plate and leave the armrest in place. Of course, the doors inside a 25-plus-year-old vehicle can be filthy, so this was a good time to wash the plastic bits. We also wanted to add a bit more insulation to the front door cards, so that was our next step, using a high-strength spray contact adhesive. We briefly looked at nylon hardware to determine how the panel could be rebuilt, and got a good feeling about SAE spec number 832 hardware. Then we set that aside and went to the laborious task of pulling the stock leather off the plastic backer. Is this required? Depends on what you want to do. We were planning to add a lot of materials, so getting rid of the excess thickness was essential. But the OE gray leather turned out to be the only part of this door card that was assembled with high-quality materials. If you want to recover this section but don't care about adding a foam backer, we suggest leaving the existing cover on and gluing a new one over the top. I've got a fair amount of this foam-backed upholstery left over from when I did my headliner replacement. Previously, here on Workshop Quick Takes, we used some of this when we did our reupholstery of the center console cover and covered that with leather. The reason for that was that the foam here provides a useful interface. Now we want to do the same thing on these door trim panels. So It looks like there's still more than enough fabric here to do both of these and probably get both of the rears jumped in here as well when we get to that stage. But for now, let's go ahead and just try and draw an outline like this so we know about how much we need to do for the doors. Been trying to do precision work with old scissors too long, so I went ahead and got these shears from Harbor Freight. We'll use these to try and cut this out along here. And then the next step is to glue it down over this and over glue it so that there's excess hanging off the edges, and then trim that back so it comes exactly around the edges. Then when we wrap the leather around the edges, the foam will stop at the edge, the leather will wrap around the back and form a very tight edge along here, matching pretty much what was done with the original. Okay, some of my earlier projects were undertaken during the COVID pandemic when 3M products were really hard to get for many supply chain reasons, but High Strength 90 is widely available once again, so let's try that out. I've got the upholstery side down, that's going to be top facing. I got the foam side up. I'm going to spray these, and then I'm going to spray these, and we should be able to mate them together. We'll trim off the excess. Okay, it's been a couple minutes. Everything's had time to tack up. Let's see what happens when we drop this onto this. Yep, that's what we're looking for. Around the door handles here, it looks like I'm going to need to go ahead and just do a little like this right now. I can trim these up a little more neatly later, but basically we don't want a lot of foam down in here because these need to pull very, very tight. So if I need to remove more later, I will, but for now, let's just go ahead and cut out this circle and make sure that that isn't going to interfere with the adhesive curing around the rest of the perimeter here. Now for a tape job. Especially on the corners here, this is going to be a little tricky to get these nice and tight. Once the adhesive was properly set, the foam was closely trimmed around the edges. Then it was time to fit the leather. The process was mostly a repeat of the foam. Mark the approximate fabric required, over trim slightly, apply spray adhesive to both surfaces, wait for it to tack up, then set the fabric in place and tape wrap it until a full cure was achieved. One additional step here was to staple the leather around the perimeter of the door latch plate hole. This step may or may not be necessary depending on the material you choose to work with, but we found it made the latch hardware easier to reinstall later. We then forgot to do it on the rear doors many months later, and those were trickier to reassemble as a result. Okay, this was left 24 hours secure, not because it needed to be, but because I had other things going on, and so everything should be stuck nice and tight now, if it was ever going to be. I can actually leave a lot of this tail and just glue it down flat, but for sure I have to get around these. So I just want to leave a small, maybe like that, through there, and then maybe come down like that through here. The process of glue wrapping the leather will be tedious, but if you study how the OE material was applied, some techniques will become apparent. Mostly, don't glue more material than necessary, but not less either. And deeply trim the corners to form small tags that can be pulled tight, obscuring the heavy wrinkles that would be visible from the front, while avoiding any extra thick layering that would push out the accent panel from the rear side. This step alone may take an hour or more per accent panel, but this is the most visible piece of the door trim card, and a rush job will haunt you forever after. So yeah, as I was getting to the final steps of the leather there, I realized I had set myself up. What I had thought about early on, and should have done, was putting the screws through from the front side back when we had just pulled the factory leather and had that bare foam, before putting on our own layer of added foam, and in fact, that's exactly what we remembered to do on the back doors. Here you can see it going on, and it worked out great. The screw heads went far enough down that once the foam and the leather were over them, they were completely invisible. They didn't show through on the front side. But since we forgot to do that in this case, well, the only option was to start reinforcing the post spots on the back, especially the ones that had broken off because the plastic was old and brittle, and then install the studs on top and clip the heads so that we had mounting points. It worked, but it probably added a couple hours or more to the project. Well, taking a look at these, the ones I drilled off are here, 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 and here. But interestingly, there's these other little positions here, 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 and here, which don't seem to be threaded or anything. It looks like they had a location for a press-in nut. So one possibility is to actually put a nut in there and then press this down so that it seals it in place. I think that was probably there to act as a repair in case one of these door latches ever did have to be replaced in service, because the holes line up but there's just nothing in them. So that's one possibility. Another that I was experimenting with a minute ago is to take this number 832 screw and just use that to do a quick thread tap. And after doing that, I can put a number 832 nylon screw down into it. While we were at this stage, we decided to use lacquer thinner to finish deleting the mostly faded lock labels on our latch plate toggles. A stepper bit happened to have a neatly rounded tip and was used to make a detent on the lock position side of each toggle. After that, we used a small spot of oil-based Rust-Oleum paint to highlight each detent as a white dot. The oil-based paint needs 12 or more hours to cure, so this step can be sequenced with other work or just left alone overnight. Right now the paint's kind of sitting level with the top of that hole. But as the volatile solvents evaporate out of the paint and it fully cures, it'll kind of hollow down in and form like a little dish shape. Okay, it's been a bit of a long walk, but here's what we were getting to. I'm going to do a test fit with this before I actually start cutting the heads off these screws. It should mostly fit through the existing holes. Yeah, some of these really don't want to come through, do they? They will though. The important thing is you can actually see them all lining up here. And that means I can actually reattach this by cutting the heads off these screws and then sticking nuts on there instead. I'm going to have to pull some staples. Going to have to do some leather dyeing and clear coating. So still several more steps to go before we get there, but we're getting close. Well, with the benefit of having had my leather center console cover in the car for over a year, I now know that I need to use a lot more of the blue-green because that seems to fade out a little more aggressively compared to the other colors. When I first put that in, it looked almost like an exact match. And now it looks more of a brownish. It doesn't match the seats anymore. So at some point I'll have to get around to redoing that. But for now, I want to try and kick these off right on the first try. And that means a nice, rich, heavy coat of blue-green is the base color. And then after that, we'll build on that. When working with leather as an amateur, your dyeing and finishing options will be limited. Auto parts stores sell flexible paint, which works for low wear areas. Alcohol and oil-based leather dyes are sturdier stuff, although the former tend to be sensitive to fading. Shoe tinting creams and similar can moisturize and adjust the tint, and when all is done, acrylic finishers can give sheen and help extend the wear life of the surface. We focus mainly on dye and finisher for the front door accents. Okay, this is now good and dry. It was my hope when I started in on this that this weird bluish green iridescent whatever's going on here wasn't actually the coloration, and I don't think it is. Because the leather I was working with already has a finish on it, I don't think it's soaking up as much dye as I put on it. And as a result, some of that dye was left sitting on the surface and just left behind this weird iridescent look. And the way I figured that out is I just went ahead and started applying clear coat. And as I did so, the clear coat not only began to coat the leather, it also pulled off that weird surface shimmer and just left behind this very rich, deep, dark green color, which, I don't know, I think that looks about like the upholstery out of my dad's 70-something Roadrunner. But I think once it's in the Jeep and has time to sit for a bit, I think it's going to fade to about the same hunter green as the seats are now. Leather top coat or clear coat, whichever you want to call it, does two things. One, it protects the leather and dyes underneath from immediately being damaged whenever you go to clean the leather. You still don't want to use any harsh solvents, including alcohol. So if you've got any kind of alcohol-based cleaners, wipes, hand sanitizer, whatever, don't. But it will provide some protection against instant damage, and also it just provides a wearing surface. I think we pretty well got it. Seeing maybe just a hint of light green yet around here in here, but we can go ahead and do a touch up on there here in a minute, and that should mostly fill that in. Alright, let's discuss how I'm going to prep all these panels for paint. As the saying goes, painting is easy and fun, it's the prep work that's hard. But if the prep work isn't done right, the paint will be wasted, so... First up, I need to clean. A soft bristle brush with soap and water would be best if I wanted to keep this factory, but since I'm repainting, I can go a little harsher with brass wire, sponge sanding, so that's going to be the first step here. I'm not going to do that to the armrest, since that area is not changing color, but I do want to hit the black plastic around the switch, bezel, and grip with matte clear coat when we get there, so I'm going to clean those thoroughly anyway. Soap and water, simple green cleaner, those are going to be my degreaser agents for getting the plastic cleaned up across the entire door after I finish the sanding part here. I've also got a bit of a crack forming under the accent panel, and I don't want that to spread into a visible part of the door, so I might do a little plastic welding on that or touch it up with epoxy and mesh. We'll see about that after the cleaning. As a final step before painting, I also intend to wipe down the entire card surface with lacquer thinner to soften the plastic a bit, and it will definitely remove any lingering oil residue. Might help the plastic take the paint better, but either way, won't hurt it since we're painting. It doesn't matter that it damages the plastic surface a little bit. I just don't want to hit the lettering up by the switch assembly when I do that though. Yeah, if I do that, it'll just take those right off. Once I get past that, I'm going to tape off the entire armrest and switch assembly for the tan paint. That's going on the main door trim card. Then untape the switch assembly, well, everything there that has the black plastic actually, and apply the matte clear coat for a clean refinish. The only part I'm doing nothing to here is the armrest. It's a high wear area, and I don't have a good way of recovering or refinishing it and then getting a sturdy reassembly after. So I would rather know my limits, just leave it alone. These are what we're going to be painting with today. This here is supposed to be a plastic adhesive promoter. Instructions say to apply it 2 or 3 light coats, and then within 10 minutes of the final coat, then you apply your top coat. And that's supposed to help it stick to plastic materials. I need to paint it to wrap the edges, so I'm actually going to start around the back perimeter here, and then go to the other side. Next stop, tack cloth. This is a pre-treated cloth that you can use to remove any excess loose spray. Some of the paint actually cures in midair and then just lands as kind of a dust, and so you want to get all that off next. It's kind of sticky. This here is a 2-part clear coat in a can, and the way you get that is you break that. You get something like 48 hours to use it. That's all it takes. Now the 2 parts in there are able to mix. Okay, so that should do it for the clear coat. What I've done here is I've saved just enough in this can, and once this is all completely cured and I can tape over it, I am going to remove all this next, but then I'm going to tape around the lip of the top trim piece here, which I damaged a little bit when I was cleaning it, and it didn't quite polish up the way I hoped it would. So instead I'm going to re-clear coat it, and it should go right back to black. Well, there it is with the tape carefully removed. The clear coat here is not completely set, but as long as you don't press anything into it, it won't stick anymore. So the reason for taking off the tape early, even though it's risky because you could damage the paint while you're working at it, is I found that that 2-part clear coat has a tendency to melt the masking tape to plastics and other surfaces, and then you're just left with a terrible mess later trying to get that all up. So if you get it all up while it's fresh, it helps. Well, there they both are. You could use the 3-foot versus 3-inch rule. You look at them from 3 inches and there's definitely still some flaws in there, but overall they look really good at a glance. Well, these panels have now dried out about as much as they're ever going to. I deliberately waited a couple extra days. If you have the time to wait, it helps. Everything just sets in a little better, gets a little more cured. You probably could work with them after about a day, but everything's still a little green and tends to chip off. Okay, so we're going to need to start with one. And now we're going to have to take the step of cutting these heads off, because the goal here is to actually screw nuts on from the back side, which is why I have all this hardware still ready to go over here. Initially, we're going to cut just the very top off. Okay, repeat 14 times or until warm in the middle. Now, the way this is going to end up working is ideally all of these will drop through. The ones that don't might just need a little bit of a coaxing. Oh, look at that. That's our final configuration, more or less. Just need to get everything secured down, and I'm not going to tighten it super tight because I've still got to get the latch in here, trim ring, all that fun stuff. Yeah, just like that. Okay. So it looks like this technique is viable. A couple of these washers are extra thick, and I think I'm going to use one of them over here because I see some of the compound bled up there. Okay, so that goes in there. Alright, now if all went well, oh yeah. XJ Orvis edition, I hope. We'll see how well that holds up. It is thicker and fluffier than it was before, which is not a huge deal because I mean this just sits off to the side, and if your arm's resting on it, then there it is. So, 1 of 2 for the front, and then repeat the entire process 2 more times for the rear doors. I hope it's worth it. Okay, next step. I previously used these stair treads to provide protection on high wear areas of other plastic panels in the vehicle, so I'm going to continue with that with the bottom of the door here. Now for the heat gun, I'm just going to use a low setting. I don't want to fry anything here, but I will be able to see when this stuff here is getting pretty hot because it's going to start getting a little more translucent. Additionally, when it's nice and warm and soft, I can push it down into the crevices and creases or even around corners very conveniently. Okay, yeah, that's good and hot, and it's really adhering in now. One more thing I want to do on this door panel before I wrap it up, since I've already gone to all this effort, we might as well fix one of the other common problems on it. This one here is actually in pretty good shape overall. Some of them get worse than this. But the reason this happens is, on this side, these plastic pieces here gradually warp back over time and then they don't hook tightly. So one more step to seal that up, and that is going to be the 3M weather strip adhesive. And so what I'm going to do now is just go over each of these and just put a blob around that entire connection. Kind of seal it off, and that way hopefully it won't crack because the adhesive will kind of shrink as it dries and share the tension with the plastic piece. Okay, so now we're just going to let that sit and cure up, and when it does, it'll be obvious because it's going to shrink a lot and kind of pull into whatever it's connected to. Well, there it is. That's what that stuff looks like when it's pretty well cured up. It's shrunken in a bit and pulled together, so that's exactly good. It makes for a tighter seal when all is said and done. To complete the Orvis Edition effects, we picked up a few small door pockets from one of the usual online sites that deal in random plastic detritus. The fixtures are not high quality, and the size is good mainly for maps or cell phones and accessories. But these door trim cards aren't too sturdy anyway, so that was as large as we wanted them to be. And the mesh netting matches the OEM pocket on the back side of the front seats. The one caution here is that the available mounting depth behind the trim card is 1/4 inch or less, so any hardware installed here needs to be low profile, or it will force the trim to bulge outward once the card is reinstalled. With that done, we thought of another way to waste time on aesthetics. Inset mounting the logo plates for our JBL door speakers into the molded grills. This forced us to make a small repaint that could have been avoided if we had thought of it sooner, but it wasn't a big deal, and the final product looks like an OEM design compared to just surface mounting the logos. The door moisture barriers had become dirty with age and damaged from multiple past projects, so we took a minute to wash, repair torn edges using a heavy-duty tape, and apply fresh double-sided adhesive. Once all that was done, we were finally ready to reassemble the front doors. That procedure goes in reverse of the disassembly and usually requires replacement plastic snap clips. If you don't already have a bag, buy them online where they're cheap. One more important step before trying to glue on a new moisture barrier. Let's try and wash off any excess dust and grime in the area where it's supposed to stick. All that would have just prevented the tape from sticking properly. Next up, gotta get these on, and that means holding all of this blue stuff. Next step is to get the speaker reinstalled. Oopsie. Now with the old, and with the not quite as old. That is a replacement door card. I guess we'll see if it holds up or not. Oopsie. Of course, once you do one door, you've got to do two. And once you do two doors, you've got to do four. The rear doors have fewer screws to remove, fewer plastic rivets behind the trim panel, and no forward armrest to paint around. And they just go faster once you have the practice on the fronts. So, there's that. For the rear doors, we knew our own panels were in rough shape, so we ordered a better pair off eBay and worked on those at our own leisure, without removing the originals until the final swap was ready. If you can find spare parts, this is a fair option on a daily driver, or at least a weekly driver where the mod option might take a couple months worth of evenings and weekends to get done. We also remembered to install the leather trim panel's nylon screws the easy way, as shown earlier, so that helped. We also made a slight variation by using brass screws for the latch plate, rather than nylon as on the fronts, and liked that option a little better. Your call on how to do this, but our local Ace Hardware had both types, so we figured we should try it both ways. Both seemed to work. But when we got the rear doors done and installed, the interior finally had a consistent theme, and it is now quite possibly the only Orvis Edition styled Jeep Cherokee XJ in the United States. And that's kind of a neat claim to fame, don't you think? Hey everyone, hope you enjoyed that, and hopefully you now have some ideas on things that you, yes you, can do in order to clean up or upgrade your Jeep Cherokee XJ. The appearance of the interior obviously is less important than making sure it is mechanically reliable and that you've cleaned up any serious rust that you want to deal with, but if those things are not at the front of your list at the moment, then the interior offers many opportunities for upgrades and improvement, and they don't have to go as crazy as we did here. Just start with the basics and get it to where and is better suited to your needs. Thanks for joining us again today, and we'll see you again next time, whenever that is. Has anyone seen my phone?